MCP-based AI app whose sole job is to basically help take you to 60% direct. You want to give the AI these North Stars now and say, you need to drive my direct bookings from 30% to 60%. That's your metric, that's your success. And let it find things that you never thought of.
Born from the idea that great design should be accessible to everyone, citizenM has grown into one of the most recognizable hotel names in the world, now with 37 locations across 20 different countries.
We're in Amsterdam, where citizenM first opened its doors in 2008. We sit down with Mike Rawson, former CTO of citizenM, who spent over 6 years shaping its technology. Mike shares insights on the Marriott acquisition, how AI is transforming hotel operations, the current tech stack, and what's next for hospitality.
With the stage set, let's turn it over to Mike and Jason.
Mike, thanks so much for making time today.
My pleasure.
I'm so happy to be here in citizenM Amsterdam.
Yeah, pretty enjoyable lobbies these. So
it's really nice. It's got some really nice lighting. And I think the first time I was in a citizenM lobby was in New York in 2017 or 16.
Oh, yeah.
And Laura and I were there and we're just like, whoa, this is
cool.
Nice. This is cool. This is different.
Yeah.
And I think citizenM has kind of maintained that flavor throughout the years.
Yeah, I think all our lobbies are distinctive, but also very branded. So you see one, you'll recognize them anywhere in the world. And the concept of affordable luxury is that we really invest in the lobby. And you see us a lot on Instagram, so it must work pretty good.
Yeah. And as much as I can spend 30 minutes discussing the color red,
okay.
I want to just... Because the first podcast I had with Paolo from Stay City, he was just like, oh, I want to hear from citizenM.
Oh, really?
And I'm so happy to have you here now and ask you straight. So how is citizenM approaching AI today?
Yeah.
Because I read a few articles about you and you mentioned that AI would have the #1 impact on hotel operations in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's quite a big statement. So I'd like to break that down and hear your thoughts on what does that mean?
Yeah, so obviously we have to talk about AI because clearly it's just dominating the whole world at this point. And then, so let's talk about it, at the top level, and then we'll bring it into the hospitality space. So at the top level, for me, it is now what I'm calling Greenfield 2.0. So it has changed, it's resetting everything. Similar to when, let's say, the .com arrived, okay? And yeah, that was a bubble eventually, but it still reset and changed everything. And AI, in my view, was bigger than the .com. And we're thinking about it as in like Greenfield 2.0. And what does that mean? Well, that means you have to start thinking like an AI native. And then you'll see at the moment there's a huge divergence continuing on where you see a lot of reports that the use cases are not being met, the ROIs are not being met, and yet the 300 million, 400 million AI users continue to grow and use the product.
800 million right now.
Yeah, so that's right. So that's you can barely keep up with the number, right? And so clearly the adoption is happening, and at this point, the ROI is reportedly not arriving, and I just think that's a couple of things. I think potentially trying to put AI as the holy grail to solve the biggest and ugliest problems is probably still a difficult thing to do. Where actually there's probably a whole lot of low-lying fruit that you can basically go after, and we certainly have done that, so we'll get to cover that. And then secondly, the space is so dynamic and so has so much volatility at the moment. That's a very difficult thing to invest in as let's say, making investment in AI. Because some of the ones today will be bought by some of the big guys tomorrow. Some of the ones that are point-to-point today will be just, their functionality will just disappear into a platform. Someone will just come out and release a platform edition and that whole product will disappear. So how do you navigate your way through the volatility that's in the AI landscape? That's quite a complex problem. And then lastly, we're drowning in AI promises. And I just don't think at the moment anyone's really spent a lot of time thinking about the security and privacy elements that needs to occur to basically support it, right? So for an enterprise, we certainly at citizenM have a history of being very innovative, and my role is to continue to grow that innovation. But at the same time, I need a privacy and security wrap around that when it goes to production. And at the moment, that's a huge impediment to the stuff that basically has to go, right? The GDPR, the PII. what are you enabling the AI to do? How much power has it got? How do you control the changes that it's got? How do you back it out? So, there's a lot of things to consider about rolling it out. And so that's complexity, and that's, that makes CTOs and CIOs have a pretty big role these days. And as you know, you can't do a business without tech these days. So my final view is that the CIOs and CTOs will essentially, other big callers over the next 5 to 10 years, the CIOs and the CTOs will move into the CEO role. Mm-hmm. I believe that the business is not as complex as the tech. And therefore, you can't do anything without the tech. So I think you're going to see more and more that the tech is just going to take over the business.
Wow, that's an interesting take.
Because it's got to go one way or another. So historically, it's been the business with some tech. Well, I think in the future, it's going to be some tech with some business, because I think that it's the only way forward. So that's the macro. And then if we come down into AI currently, so citizenM has 2 North Stars for how we approach this, so that we just have an idea and we don't drown in the tech. So the first one is personalization at scale. So for the guest, I want to be able to do personalization at scale for you with AI. And what does that mean? Well, that means adding value or removing friction. So at the end of your journey, for example, and I notice that you stay with us every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll get you that rebooking offer for the same room in citizenM for the next 2 weeks with your discount, and basically knowing that also if you come to that booking, we know what temperature you like it at, and we probably even can get the ambassadors to offer you that coffee because it's already on your folio, so we know it's your favorite drink. It's a small example, but essentially that's the adding value. And the other one is just removing friction. So making sure that the invoice is perfect, that it's set up for your company, for example, and not you personally, all that personalization. So that's personalization at scale, and we continue to use that as the way to look at the guest and look at the guest for the total guest journey. And then the second one is automation at scale. So for the employees, for the ambassadors, the more time I or the team get to create the space for the ambassadors to have more time with you and less time on a computer, the higher our ratings are, the higher our NPS is, the higher everything is, right? So that part of the magic sauce is pretty easy. More time with the ambassador and the guest equals happy guest. So our job is to then take that automation. So currently we have a product called Mamba, which is the app for the ambassadors. And if you want to do a room move, you can walk up to the ambassador and say, something's wrong with the room, we'll move you from 1, 2, 3 to 4, 5, 6. For the ambassador now, that's on the phone, click, 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 done. Whereas previously they'd have to go to the desk and essentially do a whole lot of extra steps. The advantage of that also is the ambassador doesn't need to know what system. So even if that's using 3 systems, that's all just hidden now from the ambassador. And if we decide to change out one of those systems or AI it, that's all agnostic. So I like that from a tech point of view, yeah? So those are the first 2 sort of, or at least how we approach it. And then let's talk about the employee automation, because I think that at the moment, that's the use case we've gone after in a big way, because we're very careful with the personalization at scale by putting AI directly against the customer. Does it have the tone? Who's monitoring it? There's a lot of things there that we're being. If it goes
wrong, it could be.
If it goes wrong, it's going to damage your brand directly, and that thing is talking for you. And you saw the example where someone got a free car from the chatbot, and that got held in the courts. So it's speaking for the company, right? So we're going slowly on the AI directly to the customer, but fast on the automation at scale for the employee. So we currently been running that for at least 12 or 18 months. So we have 2 digital employees at the moment. So that's how we positioned this. So our first digital employee was called Robbie. And it's very clever to make it a digital employee, to personify it, because it's actually a complex piece of AI. But when I talk to the CFO, I go, hey, this is Robbie, and he never gets sick. He doesn't need a pension. Basically, he doesn't go on holiday, and he's 80% more accurate than his co-workers. And he goes, oh, where can I sign? So the packaging of your digital employee that way, we found that very successful. And then secondly, our employee called Robbie, it sounds boring, but actually Robbie can take an invoice from our inbox, of which we get 10,000 a month or something. He will find that invoice. Robbie goes away, finds the supplier in our system, finds the purchase order that's related to that invoice, checks that the purchase order and the invoice and the goods receipt are all basically correct, so three-way match, and then we'll actually pay that invoice. So that's a real-world example, and currently Robbie's doing about 70% of our invoices, and where it's not, that's on us. It's usually data or it's some other process.
Some mismatch.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's right. It's the quality of our data or the quality of the system or some other things. Yeah. So that's. Can you get a question on that?
Yeah. How did you build Robbie? So where did that idea originate from? Did you build it yourself? Did you buy a software in the market?
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about more details about the tech behind Robbie?
Yeah, so Robbie is, so we engaged a company. So in the Netherlands, there's a company called Freeday.ai. There's a few companies that are doing this. We also use another one called Aphy, A-P-H-Y. Yeah. But we engaged Freeday, and we were very clear about the automation at scale and the personalization at scale. And we agreed to start on the automation at scale. And the use case that had, let's say, the Goldilocks of complex enough and rewarding enough, but not crazy, was essentially this three-way match auto-paying the invoice. And it also just had a huge transaction load, and it was heavy on finance, and it was, well, everyone knows it's boring as batshit paying invoices all day. So it also gives them time to do more value-added processes, right? So we went through partnering with Freeday and iterated our way through to Robbie. And that's been in running now for, I think, about 18 months.
Amazing. So if you were to approach AI, you just kind of take these use cases one at a time and say, okay, this is invoice processing. Here's probably payroll questions, maybe from employees. And this is something else, and kind of rank order it in terms of what's the most annoying and what most...
Yeah, so you want to go for, essentially the way we do it is we do an intake. So we work on an intake with the business. And then that intake we structure around what is the frequency of the transactions, and what is the complexity of the transactions, and what is the value of the transactions, right? So triangulating those three should give you an answer. So in this case, the invoice all the way through to payment, it's high frequency, it's high value, and it's reasonably complex. And then you might have to rank that and start to, so you want a way to rank it so that you can, because you've only got limited resources, so you rank it and you then have to use that to find your one. The business will lead the way normally and say, yeah, this is the one that we want to, let's do this.
Is there anything you built in-house with your own team where you're just like, oh, this is so annoying? Because you mentioned in the past you would build something in-house if it kind of helps position citizenM as an innovator or kind of strategically ahead in terms of your competition.
Yeah.
But you might buy generic stuff. Is there something you've done in-house that you would be able to...
Yeah, so we do a lot of innovation in-house. So for example, that's proof of concept and what we call POCing stuff. We're doing that a lot. So that for example, using Zapier and looking at the AI tooling. But as an example, the automated room check that we wrote. Yeah. So which is unique, I think, to hotels. So at the moment, when you check out of citizenM, we spin up Arc, which is the automated room check, and it automatically goes in and it checks, is the iPad online? Is it responsive? Is the TV online? Is it responsive? Is the room online? Is it responsive? Essentially, is everything about that room for that next guest experience working? Yes or no? If it's not, we put it out of service. We raise a ticket for the problem. So if the HDMI is not connected, which we can tell, we'll do all of that pre-work to make sure the next guest does not have that broken promise. So at the moment, ARC's running for 40 hotels, 9,000 rooms, and it has really driven down, firstly, the amount of tickets, but also it's driven up the customer satisfaction because we now aren't relying on the customers telling us something's broken. We're already finding and fixing it. That is a perfect candidate for us to start playing with AI. So we would put AI over the top of that to start basically doing far more root cause analysis and start going, well, wait a minute, there's 15 TVs reporting the same error here, so we think that that's related. So those are the types of areas we would essentially look at AI across those types of areas, and then the decision to do it ourselves or to get a third party to do it will simply depend on cost, complexity, and time. We will choose to do a lot of stuff ourselves if we can, because we have our own tech stack. And some of the crown jewels are all ours and essentially built by us. And so we want to have that flexibility. But by default, if it's big and we've done the POC, and then we do a pilot, which is one hotel, we will probably take one of our core partners and help get it, because they also have to maintain and run it and do the support
That's also
for it.
painful,
And so that's not our core business. Our core business is essentially to ensure that we're just driving that guest journey and that guest satisfaction.
And you also have a lot of RPA,
We do.
robotic process automation, like 30 odd processes from what I hear.
Yep.
So how does that work in the world of AI? Are you kind of looking at all of them again and saying, I need to redo them with AI? Or are you just like, they work, they're fine, leave them alone?
Yeah, probably 6 years ago now when I first started, RPA was before AI. And so RPA, we got that going. There's a company called Appy that we used and still use. And indeed, we had at one point about 60 or 80 RPAs running because they were so effective for us. When we changed PMS systems, because the oral functionality that came in with Apaleo, which we knew we wanted, that took about half the RPAs out because we got that as organic functionality. So that's a good use of using the RPAs as a temporary measure in your stack. And then subsequent to that, Appy's been retooling to move more into AI. And we also have basically moved some of that functionality into AI, either ourselves or using a different partner. But it's already shrinking down, so probably at the moment we've still probably only got 15 or 20. But with the Marriott integration, because some of their stuff is not the most modern, we'll probably still have some RPA that'll be fit for purpose for that.
And I know there's a big Marriott deal that's just happened.
Big, yep.
You probably have a lot of work to do right now, so I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us. Would you mind telling us what that looks like behind the scenes from a data point of view and from a technology point of view?
Yeah. So obviously it was a huge deal and it was announced, 6 months ago. And we're going to get access. So from a business point of view, getting access to the 230 million Bonvoy members and the whole Marriott infrastructure and economy is huge, and it will be huge for us. So what does it mean high level? So if you think about the guest journey being pre-book, book, stay, essentially the pre-book and book is now going to be leaning into Marriott. So that all those capabilities will be run by them. The website, the availability, the OTAs, that's all essentially the pre-book and book. It's going to be on Marriott. And they have massive economies and massive volumes there, and we expect to see some big improvements from that. What we have to do is essentially turn on a tap, which is, you're right, it's the end of this month / November. So we're under a lot of pressure. The teams are working hard and it's looking good. But it's a big migration coming up end of October, November. And that's essentially then giving the reservation availability to the Marriott system and making sure that all our systems are turned on, that the kiosk when you arrive, you can arrive as a Bonvoy member and abracadabra, it knows you're Bonvoy and it knows that you get a special room and you get a free coffee, whatever, and that we can do all the point system. So obviously Marriott is all about points and everyone's just super excited about points. And we had to so a lot of the work is around the integration of that point system and all of that. So the arrival right from the kiosk and then right through to checkout, and also the use of the Marriott systems. So they've got at least half a dozen of their systems that we need to use to, check a guest out. They have a system called GXP. So their GXP system is essentially the CRM system. So we have a lot of adoption to do to integrate essentially into our journey, parts of their journey that are mandatory. So it's a lot of work. It's quite a bit of change management. And I think the most important thing is it's very important to us not to wreck the secret sauce. So suddenly putting a whole lot of friction into the guest arrival when the kiosk can be really snappy. Yeah, there's a balance there. And we have to make sure we guard the guest experience when you're dealing with such a big corporate who have a lot of requirements.
How do you guard the innovation DNA as well?
Yeah.
Because if you don't take care, then you could be just worrying about integrations all day long. And then you've got all these AI initiatives ongoing. So how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so we were just talking about it last week. So we went to see Marriott last week and we had a good session with them, and one of them is the innovation approach and strategy. We believe we still have a lot of firepower in what we'll call the stay part of the guest journey, so from the arrival to the checkout. Essentially, our 40 hotels are a perfect little pilot. We're a very small pilot for Marriott. So they see the use of citizenM in that space. And also because we are still so tightly integrated as a unit, our speed is very high for these types of innovations. So the working process will probably be that we will take the lead, still do POC pilot and roll out. And then those types of things will then basically be showcased up into Marriott. So for example, they're super excited about the kiosk. So that's kind of their number one thing. They don't have a kiosk and they're very interested in our kiosk. And at the moment that's kind of got so in a way, a lot of stuff that they've purchased for them is innovation. So right now, without us doing anything, we could probably sit back for a couple of years because we've got a lot of stuff that for them is new. Kiosk is number one.
Yeah. When I was doing research for this interview, I was just like, how many things are you guys doing? Like the loyalty app, the kiosk, the room tablets, all these things are huge projects. Can you talk a little bit about the kiosk and tell us what's so special about it?
Yeah, so the kiosk, well, two things. So firstly, the original kiosk was here, 15 years ago or whatever at Schiphol. So at that point, the industry literally said, you guys are crazy. No guest is going to check themselves in. It's insane. So, full credit that they went on with that. Recently, we've essentially refreshed all of the kiosks. So it's now basically running off an iPad. It's running on Flutter, which is just super agnostic for the hardware and the screen size and all that stuff. So you can run Android, and so super happy to have that. And it's being produced and run for us by a company called Rocksoft, which is a Netherlands company, and they've been with us for a long time. And they do the in-room iPads as well, and Mamba. So it's very useful because there's an example where we consolidate those products into one core partner, and we can get a lot of mileage out of that relationship, and it's easy for us to run. And they understand us very well across those three products, The kiosk is special because it just allows us to do such an easy arrival experience for the guest. It still does all the localization, so we have to freaking get passports and all the ID and all that kind of stuff. It can cope with that. And then the guest also has the UX. We put a lot of work into the UX, so it's a really easy and fast flow. And then also on the checkout, it's a really easy and fast checkout, and your invoice, it's clear. Get your invoice on a QR code. You also get it on a follow-up email link. So the kiosk is just taking just a bulk of our transactions,
and it just works. It's something.
It just works, and and we know the speed. With everything's recorded, we have all the data, so we know the ins and outs. We know where the stuff fails. We know 96% of the checkouts are just within a minute. Yeah. So we're super happy about that, and that allows the ambassadors again to basically they're there to welcome you, to facilitate your check-in. You do the check-in, they help you, but it helps to then foster that discussion and that relationship rather than them standing there like this while you wonder what's going on, right? So that is the very beginning of call it the moments of truth, which is Casper, his term, our CPO. And, those moments of truth, we really have to protect those, and we really have to build on those. So the kiosk helps us with that moment of truth, which is called arrival, right? So your arrival, like you today, you're like, oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that arrival, that's special. And especially if it's the first time, we really want to make sure that arrival for you is the same for you as everybody else.
That's nice. And again, you mentioned when you first got the kiosk 15 years ago, it was something that no one had ever seen before.
No.
It's pretty normal right now.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of tap into changes in the trends?
Yeah.
And how do you prevent yourself from falling for fake trends? So how do you defend against what might be hype and that disappears in a year from now versus something that might be a durable, lasting change?
Yeah, well, firstly, you shouldn't rely on just one, let's call it one entry point. So we already had the app, which we launched, a couple, 2-3 years ago. The app allows you to check in. The plane's landed at the airport. You can check in, and basically, if you keep your citizenM card in your wallet like I do, I check in, I touch my key card, my room's all done, I can do all my meetings for the day and just come back and carry on. So we constantly evolve the guest journey, and in this case, we knew we couldn't have a kiosk in the plane, but obviously the app was the logical place to then, can we get you to check in multiple ways? So by diversifying that, you've de-risked it. And then lastly, because we do POC pilot rollout, so we do proof of concept, one hotel and then rollout, that does tend to help us stop or see things that are going to basically not be fit for purpose, right?
Right. But you don't have NFTs, for example, do you? Did you try that? I'm just curious.
We've been. I'm I'm a big fan of blockchain, and I want to distinguish that discussion from crypto, but I'm a big fan of
me too.
blockchain.
I'm a big fan as well, but I just want to understand how do you approach that new technology and validate if it's ready for the mass market adoption or not.
Yeah, it's not. So we see the digital wallet, the EU digital wallet is here. That's ready, and that's good stuff. So that EU digital wallet, we will and are already looking at that, and I just yesterday talked about doing a POC around that. So you have to keep an eye on the big things as well.
And when you do proof of concepts, how are you measuring ROI? And how are you looking at payback periods in terms of ROI?
Yep.
So are you just going, because you guys own most of your buildings, does that impact your decision? Because you own the buildings, are you able to have a longer term vision in terms of ripping and replacing entire BMS system and building the whole ecosystem of applications on top of that? How are you measuring these initiatives? What's the time frame?
Yeah, so I realise now that it is unique because we do plan, build and run, so we're unique in that hospitality space and the way we approach things. So I can determine what goes into the build that we're just doing in London Olympia right from day one, and that's super powerful because then we can make sure the strategy is how we want it. The second piece is the ROI. So there's two things. The POC is firstly a technical POC, so we only ever start with a technical POC. Does it do what it's supposed to do? Is the supplier capable of doing it? Is it just slideware and vaporware? Does the thing actually technically work for us? And if that fails, we're game over. And then that leads into essentially your business POC. So it's like, okay, what would the business drivers be and how would we measure that? And we can take that a fair way normally. And at some point you have to do a pilot. So at some point the proof is in the pudding, you do a pilot and that one hotel has to deliver it. And either we refine the pilot or we kill it, right? So the pilot's either refinable or you kill it because it basically you do one, but it's not going to cut it.
And roughly how many pilots are you running a year?
It's probably anything between, depending on which year and what's going on, it could be anywhere from 3 to 12.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of action.
Yeah, so you have to be careful we only have X amount of things we can do a year. And so that's the opportunity cost. And so you have to make sure you make the business aware that you can only put a certain amount of chips on the table, and that's always a challenge because there's always more stuff to do than what we can do.
And I also know you've spoken in the past about allowing anyone on your team kind of just bring in something as a POC. Can you speak a little bit about that model where you're just kind of sourcing ideas from your team? And
so the philosophy certainly for me very much is freedom within a framework. So we set the framework up, so you understand the North Stars. So we set the North Stars, personalization at scale, automation at scale. We set the framework up. We have a number of gates, and we also make it clear that you do POC pilot rollout. And anyone can POC anything out, and I'm just talking outside production here, just to be really clear. No POCing in production, just to be... okay, so we're all clear on that. So they all are empowered to basically put something on the team chat, come to me, come to one of the seniors, and go, hey, I just ran this NFT and check this out. And so that is a really important innovation element. It's also, there's a collaboration piece of that where they might do that together with someone from the business or someone from the hotels, and they can have quite impressive POCs that they'll basically bring up. And that's the beginning of it. So then we're like, okay, what is it and what's it doing and what are we proving? And essentially, is it adding value? Is it removing friction? All those kinds of things. And they come from everywhere. And I think once people realize that they're empowered, that I want them to go and do that, even if they need training to go and do that, I'm fine with it.
Amazing. I know we're running short on time here, but I have one question that I really wanted to ask you, and this is a little technical, so
that's fine. No, go for it, man. Hopefully I can answer it.
Yeah, well, Apple just released this MCP server.
Yep.
And MCP is like a model context protocol.
That's right.
As a travel adapter that you plug into your PMS system.
Yep.
Just for people who are listening out there.
Yep.
What do you think about this? And especially in the context of privacy, governance, security, trust.
Yeah.
How are you approaching MCP servers? How do you think you're going to use it in the business?
Yeah.
What's going to happen with this? Is it hype, or is it going to last 5 years?
So firstly, Apple, one of the reasons we chose them is their tech stack is fantastic and they're super forward about these types of things. People are kind of like, what's an MCP? Why is it, like, if all the APIs there, why do I need an MCP? And your question already, the privacy security, so I've already built some AI I've built an AI native app, so I'm in love a bit at the moment with a product called Replit.
Yes.
And with that, I was able to build basically a full AI native Apple app, doing a whole lot of interesting things in their test environment, just so everyone knows. And already that was super functional, right? And for example, it'll look at all the events locally for that hotel, forecast where those events are. If there's a convergence, it'll automatically ask you to change the rates, which you need to approve, and off you go. You already have that privacy and security right now without the MCP. The MCP allows the AI to have a really much deeper understanding of, let's say, the total customer journey and how to apply it and how to orchestrate all of those APIs, because currently the APIs are only as good as their documentation ultimately, whereas the MCP is able to be far more holistic and able to, let's say, take the technology much further. So for me, it's just a leverage point, and you still need the biggest, or the first thing I would build with an MCP right now, to answer your question, would be a privacy and security wrapper. And the first thing it would do is be checking the stuff that wants to go to production.
And what do you think the use case would be for that? Or it could be anything. Is there something that fascinates you?
Yeah, I think for the guest journey, there is a number of personalizations at scale that we can apply for the guest journey. And let's take the usual, one of the best drivers, getting more direct bookings. Okay, so everything that you can take away from the OTAs and get direct bookings, I believe that you could put an MCP server up whose sole job, not the server, but MCP-based AI app, whose sole job is to basically help take you to 60% direct. That's a really good use case. It's really valuable. No one can do it currently. And you would use that as your North Star for the AI. So you don't necessarily, you need to change the way you think, because don't give it the, I want A to go higher. You want to give the AI these North Stars now and say, you need to drive my direct bookings from 30% to 60%. That's your metric, that's your success. And let it find things that you never thought of and let it basically
And you think
run.
it's smart enough to do that?
I think it will take 12 to 18 months, and then I think it's going to start have that capability. And it might be that you need 3 or 4 other agents to do that as well. Not just one agent, you might need it to orchestrate 3 or 4 other agents.
You're already living in the future.
Yeah, I really have forced myself to go AI native, and I'm trying hard to make that move, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be some kind of competitive advantage if you get there before everyone else, because you'll have a few years then in the home markets to...
You'll have... You'll do things for the guests that no one else can do, and that's what you have to. So if everyone's got AI and everyone's got MCP, so that's automatically a huge lever. So then it's the ones who got in there a bit earlier will get some advantages. But to be honest, if you take all of that, the piece that's going to be the biggest leverage point is the human. So the ambassador and the guest is still where you're going to win. So ultimately, don't get sucked into just this tech-only world. The more that we give these guys the ammunition and the ability to recognize you and to basically support you, the more we're going to win, right? So you have to bring it back to the ambassador at some point.
Thank you so much for your time, Mike. It's been
Pleasure. Went quickly.